I'm Ray Bender with the Redevelopment Authority, and I have with me today our bond counsel from Stevens and Lee, Peter Edelman.
Hello.
And representing the owner, Chris Poulin.
Good morning.
The project is much larger than the community homes project, which is a straight refinance. This is a purchase and rehabilitation of an existing project, Lebanon Village, in the northeast corner of the city, which consists of I guess 200 rental units and one management unit, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The borrowing is likely not to exceed $10.9 million. I may have mentioned when I was here the last time that the tax code limits entities such as the Redevelopment Authority to $10 million of borrowing in any given year, but there is a provision because the Congress recognized there'd be bigger projects that would exceed any one agency's ability to fund. So each state receives excess capacity or state capacity, the amount of dollars that they allocate. And indeed, Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, which does the allocation for Pennsylvania at their meeting last Thursday, allocated the surplus capacity that we need, the state capacity that we need for this deal. They give us a bit more than we need, which they typically do in case something has to be rounded up. We did have a notice of public hearing in the Lebanon Daily News, which the commissioners have been provided with, and we held a hearing last Wednesday. Mr. Phillips attended on the proposed borrowing, and again you have the minutes of that hearing. And with that, maybe Chris can just speak briefly to the project.
Yeah, hi, good morning. My company, Silver Street Development, is purchasing Lebanon Village Apartments. It's, as Ray said, it's a 200-unit apartment complex, which we are using low-income housing tax credits and the bonds to help finance and to rehabilitate. The rehabilitation is about $5.3 million that we intend to spend on the property, and that'll take about 10 months. We're hoping to close in December of this year, begin the construction, and we'd be done construction by September or October of next year. The property, if you're not familiar with it, is 100% Section 8. The low-income housing tax credit program layers into that. It'll help bring equity into the project, which we're going to help rehabilitate the property with, and has no adverse impact on hurting other properties with the low-income nature of it. It's already financed with Section 8. Should have no impact to the surrounding community as far as pulling residents from other properties to come live there.
And it will have no impact on the residents because they will continue to be assisted by the Section 8 program, so their rents won't be affected by the financing either.
Correct.
Is that property 25 years old or?
No, it was built around 1974.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so the rehab, consists mainly of replacing components that have worn out over time: kitchens, bathrooms, roofs, windows.
Yep.
I think it's roughly $26,000 per unit of rehab. That's correct.
And this bond, is it through which bank?
We're using Prudential to help produce the loan, but the loan is actually going to be through HUD. It's a HUD.
Oh, it's a HUD
221
D4. It's not a bank deal as in community homes.
It's credits.
For the state capacity, you have to do bonds, so we'll do bonds through Prudential, and then the bonds will be taken out or paid off virtually immediately by the FHA loan.
Right.
But
so
you have to do a bond issuance in order to get the excess capacity. And these are the so-called rehab tax credits, which are a 4% tax credit as opposed to the 9% of the other deals that are in Lebanon County that Brian tried to do in Palmyra last year. That was a new construction credit, which is a 9% credit. These are 4% credits, which are not as much of a demand as the 9% credits, but they fit nicely with an existing project like this.
Now that you referred to tax exempt, that's the lender does not pay tax on the.
That's correct.
On the profit of the loan, is that correct?
On the income, on the interest received, yes.
Right.
And it in no way jeopardizes or ties down any of our other housing funds?
That's correct. There's no county affordable housing fund money proposed for it, and no entity of government, be it the state or local, has any obligation in regards to the debt.
Okay.
Okay. You have questions? Questions? Oh, John.
Yeah, I do. Do you know about how many residents there are over there and what kind of impact it might have on them while you're doing the rehab?
I don't have a specific tenant count. There's more than 200 people living there, I can tell you that much. As far as the rental situation, as far as their rent, there's no impact to them as far as what they're paying toward their rent. During the rehab, this is what I would term an occupied rehab, which we've done several thousand units this way, where we work within the unit while the resident's living there. The nature of the rehab isn't such that we would have to vacate the unit in order to do it. The condition of the property is very good, except the components are worn out. So when we will do a kitchen, for example, generally, you're not going to finish a kitchen in a day, but what you can do is work with the resident to get them prepared for what we're about to go in and do. Help them move their belongings out of the kitchen cabinets and get those prepped. And then, quite literally, we can go in a day, remove the kitchen, put in a new kitchen. It will be functional. It won't be complete, but it'll be functional. The water will work. They'll be able to cook. The refrigerator will still work. Things of that nature. The next, it'll take about 4 to 5 days of work within the unit to complete the scope, because we're doing flooring, bathrooms, doors, things of that nature. So there's a string of work that's going to be done over 4 days. But we really take a lot of effort to try to have a very good relationship between the contractor and the management and the resident to help smooth that process, because ultimately we're in their house. We try to take a lot of caution while we're in their homes, trying not to break things like that. But ultimately what they get is they're going to get a brand new unit, essentially. So there's incentive on both sides to cooperate to get to that end result.
And just to follow up, do you have your own prearranged contractors, or do you hire local contractors?
We've contracted with a firm out of Westchester called Allied Construction Services. The HUD lending program and the tax credit program are very stringent when it comes to who you're working with. There's a lot of due diligence that's done not only on the developers but on the contracting firms that we use. Contractor needs to be bonded so they're of a financial capacity that they can handle something like this and do it efficiently.
Can you tell us a little bit about Silver Street Development?
Yes. Silver Street started in 1997 in Portland, Maine, and we are a national low-income housing developer. We primarily develop our properties with low-income housing tax credits. We have very few properties that are 100% market rate. We have properties that are a mixture of tax credit and market, but we have none that are 100% market. We've specialized in this niche, and we've rehabilitated about 10,000 apartments using this program. We operate in 15 states, mostly up the Atlantic coast, and we also have an affiliated management company that manages about half of our properties.
Thank
In
you.
Pennsylvania itself, we own 4 properties.
4?
4.
Does your GC hire locally?
Yeah, they're going to work with subs that they know. They are going to work with some local subs. I don't have that list available at this point, but it's they go through a bidding process and a qualification process when they do this. So they do work with some local subs. I can't say that they all are.
And essentially, they would have done that already.
Yes.
Because with tax credits, PHA requires you to identify the whole team going in. So they would have had to have priced out the subs, identified the subs for when the application for tax credits went in. Because the point system that PHA uses allocates points for firms that have experience with their program. And they also evaluate the contractors for the ability to perform. So that process should have been in place by now, I would think.
I may probably miss this number. You said you're in 15 states and you
Yes.
have 4 facilities in Pennsylvania. How many facilities altogether do you?
70.
70. Thank you.
Project, as required by the Internal Revenue Code. The resolution does make clear that there is no liability to the county whatsoever for this approval. It's just a requirement in condition to the issuance of the bonds.
Right. Very good. Any other questions before we seek a motion then?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second on the floor. Any questions, any further comments? If not, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 So moved.